We saw it only as a demeaning to be submissive. We saw it as something that was against our free will, that was taking away our individuality, that was somehow making us conform to something that we really didn't want to conform to. And the flesh allowed something else to be created out of the law that was never intended. The traditions of men created religious rituals that canceled out the actual commandments of God. And so the people of the Jews were taken over by the oral traditions of the law and not able to receive the revelation of truth because their flesh did not know how to translate the law into spirit relationship. And the Bible says Vashti refused to come. Now, folks, the world is watching. If this was done in the quietness of the palace, and the king just says, honey, would you come here? And she says, no, not right now. I'm tired. But I just want you to come in here and spend a few moments with me. I'd like to sit at the table. Can we wait till later, sweetheart? There would have been no trouble in that. Okay, my dear. But will you make some time for me in the evening? Okay. But when the world is watching and you are doing this as the king and not just as husband, this is now a representation of supreme authority. There is no higher authority than the king, and everyone who has authority in his kingdom is witnessing this. And now, the shock. He commands armies, but his own wife will not obey him. The world trembles, and she scoffs. The shame, the loss of face, the demeaning of the king in front of his entire kingdom was so powerful. The impact of her rebellion was so powerful. It ended the feast. It shut the palace gates. It made the king withdraw, and he would not allow anyone to see him except his 7 close counselors. When you see the 400 years of silence between the Old Testament and the New Testament, you see a God who has been wounded before the world. You see God who has been rejected by his own people. You see God who called and asked for the Jews to come. Here he had spent all of his nature, all of his character. He had invested his name. He put his name in Jerusalem. He sent them the prophets. He has given all of this time, thousands of years. Everything that he is wrapped up in them. But in Jeremiah 3:8, the Bible says he had to write her a bill of divorcement. In Isaiah 50 and verse 1, it confirms it again. He had to put his wife away. Do you understand the impact of rebellion in the people of God and what that does to the world and to the universe? There was one angel that rebelled, and it caused a war in heaven. Because of that, hell was created. Hell did not exist until Lucifer fell. And so there was a division that came in heaven over one angel that rebelled. God now comes to the earth and tries to bring in relationship with a people, with a nation, with a generation of covenant people, covenants of blood passed from generation to generation to generation. He reveals himself in the fire and the smoke. He reveals himself in the water coming out of the rock. He shows himself. And now, at the end, as he's trying to bring Israel into this ultimate destiny of being a kingdom of priests, no, we're too busy having our religion to do right by our relationship. If the law could have given us salvation, the Bible says, he would have saved us through the law. He tried. But there was something about the flesh and something about our nature that refuses to accept God on those terms. So the withdrawing, no more prophets, quiet, silence. God hides his face. He's taking counsel with his own will. Ephesians 1:11. By the counsel of his own will. 7 spirits of God. God is taking all the aspects of his nature and he's weighing out the ramifications. What should I do? I still love Vashti. She's still my wife. I still gave her my name. But she not only embarrassed me, she not only disrespected me, but as one of his counselors said, she did this against the whole kingdom. Because this is the first display in public that we've ever seen. He wanted it to be his wife coming to consummate this entire event with her saying, darling, I love you. And one embrace would make all the men and the women of the world go, oh. But instead, the counselors say, they're going to hear about this. And every man that comes home to his family, comes home to his wife, when he walks through the door, she's going to say, well, the queen didn't have to obey you. I don't have to obey you either. Queen does not obey the king, so why should I obey you? You know, I think she's got something. I think we all need to be liberated. And this was the beginning of gender wars. This was the beginning of strife in the home. This was the beginning of wrath and contempt. The Bible says, and unless this wrath and contempt, because the man would say, wait a minute, I'm still the man of this house, and I'm still the one that's paying the bills, and I'm still the one that's bringing. And she said, yes, but I'm making it all happen. I'm keeping it all together. And you wouldn't even have a home that even had any organization if it wasn't for me. And well, honey, I'll tell you what, if that's the way you feel, then you can feel the tension. Because what they had seen displayed in front of them, while the world was watching, their spirits were open. And what gets planted is not an example of obedience. Now it's an example of rebellion. And I'm going to ask you a question. If the people of God will not obey him, how can we expect the world to? If God's own people will not come when he calls, then how can we expect them to come when they have never heard him, when they have never known him, when all they have ever seen is just an example that comes from his own people? You wonder why there is an aversion towards religion in the world today, why people are against things that have to do with religion, because there is so much confusion. There are so many poor examples. We are not in oneness. We have not been in oneness with him. And because there was an example of rebellion by God's own people, it was a ramification that affected the entire world. So now we see a division in heaven and we see a division in the earth. And the king says, what am I going to do about this? One last decree he gives. And he says, let the man be respected in his home by the decree of the king. And let there be a visible judgment that is given to what happens when people rebel. She will see my face no more. The worst banishment was not death. If he kills Vashti, then the judgment is as long as it takes for the blade to come down. But to know that you used to have access. You used to be in the throne room. You used to live in the palace. You had an entire estate. You had all of the maidens and all of the chamberlains there waiting on you. And now you are banished. You are stripped. You have to live without access to his presence anymore. That is the worst punishment we could ever have, is to have a life where we know what it would be like to be with him, but we cannot be with him. Thank God there was something that was put in place that was greater than the rebellion, that was greater than the swinging pendulum of reaction, of gender wars between men and women, between the people that were going home with confusion about why did the queen rebel? Does she know something about the king that we don't know? If she did not obey, then why should we obey? And the potential for rebellion rising up from other areas has now been sown into their spirit. But there was in his own wisdom a plan that was revealed. They said, let there be someone better than her that will take her place. Put something in motion now. When you make the judgment, do not make the judgment without a means of recovery. So when God ever brought an end to a dispensation, he always birthed something greater for the next dispensation.